Are you looking to continue growing your AI skills, specifically in the realm of building AI agents on the Microsoft Copilot Studio platform? Well, today we're going to take a look at another training that can help you build those skills. Welcome to the Talk to Me PDD podcast. I'm your host, PDD. This is my podcast. We talk about all things technology, knowledge work, leadership management, and today, some more AI skilling. This is episode 41, AI Agents Deep Dive. So, the Agents Deep Dive is part of the Microsoft Power Up training program. This is the level 3 training for Microsoft Copilot Studio. You'll want to have some prerequisite training, whether it's things that you've done on your own or ideally taking the level 2 training. I also have an episode where I talk about that and the skills that it covers and what you'll need to know to take that course. So check it out if you're interested. Um, the level 3 training is consisting of 3 different sections. So, one on prompting, one on search, and one on adaptive cards. So, overall, even though this is a more advanced course than level 2, it's quite a bit shorter in terms of the content that you need to consume and take in. Level 2 was quite long. Um, Level 3 is much shorter and to the point. So, let's dive into each of those sections. In terms of prompting, um, what's really interesting in this training is you start getting into not just writing prompts, but using variables in your prompts and some of the workflows that you've created maybe in previous sections, being able to look at various data sources in your environment, whether that's Dataverse or SharePoint or some other source, and incorporating dynamic values into your prompts and then taking values out of their prompts and putting them back into workflows. So that wasn't really something that was covered in the earlier trainings. And this is really starting kind of to unlock the power of building automated workflows and making prompting a part of that. It also takes some a bit of a deep dive into various settings that are available within the prompt, choosing different models, different variables, different things like that. One of the ones they focus on the most is enabling the code interpreter, which allows your prompts to create and execute different types of code to get things done. I believe the example that they have within the training is something around calculating compound interest and it being more accurate to do it with code as opposed to trying to do it within the model itself. One of the things that I thought was really interesting and cool about the demos that they showed and how the code interpreter works when you're building agents within Microsoft Copilot Studio is that as you're testing the workflow in your agent, you can actually see the code that is generated as part of the workflow. So if it's something that you're going to be executing over and over again, it's kind of a sneaky way to do some vibe coding where you're describing what you want in your prompt. And then instead of leaving the prompt in your workflow for future iterations, you can actually just take that code out and use the code directly if it's what you want. So that was the first section on prompting. The second one was a little bit more of a deep dive into search and retrieval augmented generation. Um, there's a good lab that shows how you can set up Azure AI search and connect that to a large language model and use that for a custom RAG integration into your agents as opposed to using the out of the box or SharePoint search or things like that. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's applicable to many different solutions that you use with generative AI and large language models. The caveat I'll say here is one of the things that I really enjoyed about the labs in um, earlier lessons is that you could do everything within the Power Up environment. Where in this case, you're going to need your own Azure tenant and also some additional licenses if you want to bring in large language models like they do in the demos. So I didn't find it necessarily as accessible. But ideally, if you have that, you'll be able to do it and get hands on with the demos. If not, it's still useful to walk through and to understand those concepts. Um, so that's the second part, search. Third is adaptive cards, which was introduced a little bit in the lesson 2 content. And this is a way to build UI elements that operate independently of the platform. So, um, sort of like a style sheets version for agents and teams and potentially other UI environments. So being able to describe what you want once and then have it executed in a context of where placed, depending on if the user's on a phone or on different applications. Now, at first, it doesn't necessarily seem as sort of AI or AI agent focused as some of the other content. I think the useful takeaway here is it allows you to avoid having multi-turn conversations. If your agent needs a bunch of different variables and information to go and do what it needs to do, it can handle that through a conversation and going back and forth with the user, but it might be a better experience to build a form with an adaptive card where you can put in all those values, easily pull them into variables, put them into your prompt or whatever you're going to do with it, as opposed to doing all the extra work. So I think it's useful to use those there, especially if you're pulling in lots of different information from a user. In some of the examples, they also do a little bit of sort of vibe coding or vibe designing, going into Copilot, describing what you want in an adaptive card, and going through having the generative AI build out the code that you want, and then putting that back into your workflow in Copilot Studio. So those were the three sections. Really useful builds on what was in lesson two: prompting, search, and adaptive cards. Another thing to call out with lesson three, there is no challenge project like there was in lesson two. So pro or con there, depending on what you thought about that. And this is really starting to bridge from this pure, no code environment into slightly more advanced scenarios and building on that. And I think even if you're not going to be a developer that's doing some of those more advanced scenarios, understanding things like how search and retrieval augmented generation or variables and prompts and that sort of thing work, at least at a basic level, is going to give you a better overall conceptual understanding of how generative AI systems and AI agent solutions work. So again, enjoyed the course. It was definitely very much to the point, and appreciated all of the concepts there. So hopefully you enjoyed this review. Check out the course. If you like this content, please subscribe to my channel. Talk to me PDD on YouTube or on any podcast platforms. Love to hear feedback in the comments if there are questions you have about this training, if there's other types of AI skilling that you'd like to hear about in your own journey. Please let me know, and hopefully you found this helpful and look forward to more episodes in the future.